In the previous video, we decided to replace the stock carburetor on our 670cc Predator engine with a set of 24mm carburetors. Will these fancy-looking carburetors improve the performance of our Predator-powered Renault? Well, today we will find out. Unfortunately, there was no instructions with this kit. However, the installation of the carburetors was more or less straightforward, with only minor fabrication required. All of the specialized parts that were needed for this conversion were supplied with the kit. And the fabrication we did do was because we had limited space in the engine bay of our 1969 Renault R10. So far, we have tested 3 different types of carburetor systems on this engine and put a few thousand miles on the car, and we're hoping these dual carburetors give us the performance we're looking for. But let's be reasonable. This is a 2-cylinder lawnmower engine in an 1,800-pound car. So yeah, we likely won't get LS-type performance no matter what we do, but that's part of the fun. You see, any performance is good performance on a silly project like this. So as you know, in the previous episode, we did fire up the engine and managed to adjust both carburetors by ear. What we found was the idle air-fuel ratio was acceptable, if not just a little bit on the rich side. Anyway, we did take the car for a short ride around town, and overall the carburetor seemed to work perfectly. So today, we're going to do a quick jet change and install a smaller pilot jet in each carburetor to see if that helps with the idle mixture. Now, this may seem unnecessary, but the concern is, in order to lean out the air-fuel mixture at idle, the adjustment screws needed to be turned more than 3 revolutions backwards. Oh, on these Oco carburetors, backing out the idle mixture screw will actually lean out the mixture. Now, on most carburetors, this will actually enrich in the mixture. Anyway, we would like to have the adjustment closer to the standard 2 to 2.5 turns for the idle mixture adjustment. Before we get started, let's go ahead and fire up the engine and confirm the numbers we were seeing for the idle air-fuel mixture. Okay, no drama or anything. The engine starts and runs fine. We'll let it warm up for a few minutes, and then we can take a look at the numbers. So really, this isn't bad for the idle mixture on an air-cooled engine. Also, keep in mind that carburetors haven't been precision synchronized with vacuum gauges, and that's something we plan on doing, but first we have to add nipples to each manifold before we can do that. Oh yeah, the air filters are off right now, but we do run with the air filters, and the idle mixture seems about the same with or without the filters. Before we pull the carburetors to change the jets, let's confirm that we get full throttle when I press the accelerator to the floor. Let me set the camera right in front of the carburetor. Alright, let's see. Yep, we're getting full throttle. You know, this car is a bit of a hot rod and can accelerate about twice as fast as a diesel garbage truck going up a hill. So what that means is, around town, we can't drive at full throttle because we actually might get in trouble. But that doesn't mean we can't floor it outside of town. Okay, let's pull the carbs and do a quick jet change. Now, as you can see, we labeled the cylinders, and from this point forward, the carburetors will also be labeled, and this will come in handy later in the video. Anyway, here you can see that this is carburetor number 2. Alright, we have 2 servings of carburetor with a side of spark plug. Looks yummy. So these are the original spark plugs that came with this engine, and we've done a lot of experiments since then. It looks like this plug is still okay. Now, in the previous video, we did record the exhaust gas temperature of each cylinder, and the cylinder that this plug came from was running colder. Now, this could be a clue of some sort, but it may also have something to do with the unequal length headers we're running. So this plug came from this cylinder with the shorter primary tube. It's sort of a mystery, but I did have a Subaru owner reach out and indicate he's seen the same thing on Subarus with unequal length headers. I reckon after we get done fooling around today, we should swap the carburetor locations and see if the temperature anomaly follows the carburetors or if it's the way the exhaust is set up. So if we look at the other plug, this one has a bit more soot on it, which is an indicator of a rich condition. However, according to the EGT, we're seeing hotter temperatures, which is an indication of a lean condition. I'm not going to worry too much about this stuff right now. Our primary concern is replacing the pilot jet in each carburetor. So the good news is there's a wide assortment of jets that are available for these carburetors for a reasonable price. I believe I gave $13 for each bag of jets, which when you add it up, that's 2 large pizzas worth of jets. Now, when you work out the jet to pizza slice ratio, it works out to 3 jets per slice of pizza, which seems like an okay deal. Now, like most people, I don't want to do any unnecessary work if I don't have to, and replacing these pilot jets is borderline unnecessary. But the concern is, the adjustment screw on each carburetor is backed out pretty much as far as they'll go, and we run the risk of the adjustment screw falling out of the carburetor. So, I think that would be a bad thing, and we're better off just replacing the jets now before we have any problems down the road. So the pilot jets that were installed in these carburetors is a .38, and we're going to replace it with a .35, and if we have to, we can go as low as a .32. So fast forward a few minutes, and I've found a set of .35 jets from the bag of jets, and now we can install the smaller jets. Jets! So the jet size, whether it's the pilot or main jet, will be different on each application. On this 670 engine, we're running a modified exhaust system with a muffler of some sort. So the jets I'm using will be tailored for this specific application. It seems like the jets that were supplied in the kit were close enough for most applications, and if we tuned the carburetors just by ear and we didn't use a wideband air fuel meter, we would have probably never noticed the difference. Perhaps sometimes I make things more complicated because I have the tools to dig deeper. I know it's a curse, and I'm compelled to look at the data whenever possible. Fast forward a bit, and the engine's running again. This time around, we have a nicer mixture at idle. Now, the stumble you're hearing is the compression relief gizmo kicking in because, well, the idle's borderline too low. Anyway, I'm happy with the numbers, and the adjustment screws are only 2 turns out from bottoming, which was the goal in the first place. Now, we still have a difference in exhaust gas temperatures, and the cylinder with the shorter primary tube is still running cooler. I'm going to say that's good enough. Let's take this car for a spin and see if it can accelerate 3 times faster than a diesel garbage truck going up a hill. So the little Renault is back on the road again. It's always fun to drive this car. Plus, it seems like the civilian population finds this thing fascinating to look at as it passes by. The look and sound of this car is, of course, unique in every way. Now, last summer when we were testing this car, we had a series of unfortunate events, and it took a lot of time to sort out all the little details. Believe it or not, putting a lawnmower engine in a car is not as easy as it sounds. Sure, plenty of folks have done it, but making the drive system reliable is a whole other challenge. Now, this summer, the car hasn't seen much action lately, and today I drove the car for miles and miles and miles on the back roads here in rural Kansas. I had planned on doing a fuel economy run in this episode, but we really didn't have time for that this week. We'll address the fuel economy soon, but not today. Overall, the car ran great, and I managed to get it up to 64 miles per hour. I think it will actually go a little bit faster, but as I mentioned in other videos, it's scary to drive this thing that fast. The performance while cruising between 50 and 55 miles per hour is excellent. The air-fuel ratio was in the mid-12s to low 13s. The power from the little engine was adequate, and it's no LS, that's for sure. Anyway, the throttle response was outstanding, and this little engine will respond immediately when the accelerator is mashed to the floor. At this point, I reckon we need to find out if the twin carbs make a difference in all-out acceleration. Let's head over to the drag strip and do some testing. Ah yes, performance testing, my favorite part. Let's find out how fast this brick-shaped car can accelerate from 0 to 50 and 0 to 55 miles per hour. This should be easy, and all I need to do is put my foot to the floor and let the engine do all the work. But before we do that, let's talk about some of the changes we made to this car since last summer. So here's a snapshot of what we were running last summer. Here we have a 36mm Kian CVK knockoff carburetor that's connected to a billet manifold adapter with a 3D printed spacer to clean up the airflow. Now this CVK is not a regular carburetor, and it's a true variable Venturi carburetor, and you can tell that by this little tin hat on the top. These carburetors are extremely difficult to tune for applications that they weren't designed for. The good news is, with this setup at wide open throttle, we were seeing respectable air-fuel ratios, so we did have success tuning this carburetor for wide open throttle, and that's all that matters right now. Alright, let's talk about the other changes. About the time we were fooling with the 36mm carburetor, we blew out the CVT drive system multiple times. Actually, it seemed like every time we did performance testing, we would shred the drive belt on the Comet 44 Magnum torque converter drive system. So the absolute best time that we were ever able to record was 21.85 seconds for 0 to 50 and 29.77 seconds for the 0 to 55. Anyway, that's pretty fast for a lawnmower powered car, but the CVT drive system just wasn't up to the task. So we rebuilt the drive system, and this time around we used the Comet 94C Duster series clutch, and since we couldn't tune the 36mm CVK carburetor for decent air-fuel mixtures at part throttle, we went ahead and installed the stock carburetor. And that way we could focus our attention on the clutch system. Now, with the new clutch and the stock Predator carburetor, we managed to get to 50 miles per hour in 24.36 seconds, and we reached 55 in 34.87 seconds. So as you can see, the car was slightly slower with the new clutch and the stock carburetor. At the time, it was hard to say if it was the carburetor or the clutch that was slowing us down. So today our primary goal is to compare the performance of the twin carbs versus the stock carburetor, and we'll see how the twin carbs performed when compared to the huge 36mm carburetor. This should be interesting. Slamming the door synchronizes all the cameras. It's a YouTube thing. The time to beat is 24.36 seconds and 34.87 seconds. Wow, I had a feeling this car would perform well. So the twin carbs versus the stock carburetor, it's about 2 seconds faster in the 0 to 50, and it looks like on the top end we shaved almost 5.5 seconds off. I kept my eye on the air-fuel ratio, and we were in the zone between the mid-12s and the low 13s. Now, on the exhaust gas temperatures, we still have a 200-degree difference between the cylinders. So when we compare the results from our high water mark that was achieved with the 36mm CVK carburetor, well, we're a fraction of a second slower in the 0 to 50 and 2.5 seconds faster in the 0 to 55. So, the twin carburetors seem to come on strong when the engine's at its top of its RPM range. Very interesting. Let's head back to the shop and take a look at the spark plugs. I'm curious to what story they can tell us. Reading the spark plugs is of course the best way to judge the air-fuel mixture. Now, it's nice to have access to the gizmos and whatnot, but at the end of the day, it's the spark plug that'll tell you what's going on. So this guy is from cylinder number 1, and that's the cylinder with the shorter primary tube, and this cylinder's been running about 200 degrees cooler. And over here is the other plug, and this one is running, well, 200 degrees hotter. Now, looking at the porcelain right here, this plug looks fine, and if we look at the porcelain on the other plug, it also looks fine. However, it is slightly darker, but still within the acceptable range. So given that there's a temperature difference between the plugs, I would normally expect this one to be slightly darker, but that's not the case. So I reckon we really can't rely on the thermocouple probes because they're telling us the opposite of what we're seeing. Just for fun, let's go ahead and swap the carburetor positions. If there's something weird going on, swapping the carburetors may give us more data to analyze. The current tune that we're running is what I would call good enough, but I do plan on synchronizing the carburetors eventually. Unfortunately, in order to do that, I have to remove the compression relief mechanism from the camshaft. Now, that's not normally part of synchronizing the carburetors, but on this application, I need to remove the compression relief so I can get the idle speed a lot lower. Then I can go ahead and do my magic. Now, the reason I need to set the idle speed a lot lower than normal is because of the clutch system. And with the current higher idle, it's difficult to put the transmission into gear. Also, it might be cool to hear this V-twin idle lower. I don't expect it to sound like a Harley, but it should sound a lot better. Okay, through the magic of video editing and a lot of hard work, I put together a side-by-side comparison. Over here we have normal, and that's the way we originally set the car up. And of course, over here we have swapped, which, do I really need to explain? Anyway, this is a short clip on a 0 to 50 acceleration run. The difference in temperatures at this point is a non-issue because when we shot this video, the engine had idled a little bit longer. Okay, let me click on play. And go! So at the end of the acceleration run, the temperatures are about the same with cylinder number 2 consistently running hotter. So I think the carburetors are pretty much the same at wide open throttle, and any variation in temperatures may be because of the unequal length headers. Alright, well I'm not going to worry about this anymore because the spark plugs are suggesting that the mixture is fine. Now keep in mind, this is not a Formula 1 race car, and I feel diving deeper into this anomaly will not result in any significant gains on this lawnmower powered car. It is what it is. So next time around, we'll dig into the engine and modify the camshaft. Plus, we'll tune the carburetors for an even lower idle speed. It'll be interesting to see how low we can get this engine to idle. I would like to give a huge thanks to all the new patrons who signed up recently, and of course to all the subscribers who follow this channel. I had fun today, and I hope you did as well. Until next time.
Bruh.
All right, 1, 2, 3, pause. Whenever you're ready.